I want to go to the issues of judges that the president now faces. He's already on a pace that is faster than the Trump pace of appointments, and the Trump pace turned out to be very fast. There's a lot of ground to catch up on the federal bench. What is your reaction to that first 11 appointees, nominees that the president has advanced?
I was ecstatic. Great appointments. They're outstanding people. I believe very strongly that Joe Biden made a commitment, and he's keeping it. He made it very clear on the night that he was declared the winner. He said to everybody, especially to the Black community, you have always had my back, and I will have yours. And one of the best ways to have the backs of the Black community in this country is to have a Supreme Court that is diversified, have a judiciary that is diversified with the backgrounds and experiences, not just when it comes to gender and race, but also the background and experiences that are necessary to allow you to stand in judgment over people and do right by them. And I think that he has a great crop to pick from.
The Justice Breyer is the most likely Supreme Court justice to give up his seat possibly this year at the end of the Supreme Court term this summer, to open up a seat for Joe Biden to get someone confirmed. Does this slate of judges give you a hint as to who he will select? We know he's already said that it will be a Black woman, but do you have any sense of who that would be?
No, I don't. I've been reading all the speculations. As many people know, I put forth a name that's not among the ones that were named a few days ago. The ones he named are good people. I put forth another name, and I think Michelle Childs is a great justice, a great judge, and would make an outstanding justice. So he has a big reservoir of people to pick from, and I'm sure he'll do it and do it in a way that all of us would be pleased.
Judge Childs is a federal judge now, appointed by President Obama. There's something unusual about her for the makeup of the current Supreme Court, and that is that she did not go to either Harvard or Yale Law School. 8 of the 9 justices went to Harvard or Yale Law School. 6 of them were former Supreme Court clerks who are frequently taken from schools like Harvard and Yale. Do you think there's something there that needs to be changed? Is there something in that has now narrowed this process down to too small a group? Well,
I made it very clear. I think that people's backgrounds and experiences, as you know, back behind me is my book, Blessed Experiences. And I say in that book that we can never be any more, nor will we be any less than what our experiences allow us to be. And I do believe that having a diverse background of experiences, I think serves you well. And so I don't have anything against people who went to the Ivy League schools. I just believe that it would be a mistake to determine all others unqualified or unworthy.
Hey, thanks for watching our YouTube channel. You should know that you can follow today's top stories and breaking news and catch up on your favorite MSNBC shows all in one place. Download the NBC News app today.